Good evening. I'd like to call the March 27th, 2013 meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission to order. Our first order of business is a new filing notice of intent, University of Massachusetts at Lowell, home of the Hockey East 2013 UMass Lowell Riverhawks champions on their way to the NCAA National Tournament. We have to congratulate Norm Bazan and the rest of the Riverhawks. And I'm not impartial or partial here. I'm just a fan, so I'm not recusing myself from anything. We'll continue. University of Massachusetts at Lowell, DEP file number 2060704. Project location is 99 Perkins Street, and it's to improve a parking lot which is partially located within a 100-year floodplain at 99 Perkins Street and bordering land subject to flooding. Mr. Gabriel, if you'd kindly identify yourself for the record.
Good evening, Chairman Zachara and members of the Conservation Commission. My name is Fred Gabriel. I am representing the University of Massachusetts Lowell. I'm the project manager for the project at 99 Perkins Street, lovingly known by many as the Pit. With me tonight representing the university is Gene Robinson, Director of Capital Planning, and Peter Brigham, Assistant Director of Planning. Our engineering firm for the project is the BSC Group, represented tonight by Matt Waldrip, and Senior Civil Engineer and Project Manager, Dominic Rinaldi. The university is undertaking this project for several reasons. One, it's been a long focus because of the nickname, the Pit. We're looking really to improve the appearance within the neighborhood and adding a lot of landscape features, trees, screening for the condominiums. So we'll be blocking parking lot lights from going down towards the condominium, as well as to decrease the impact of our new student population from the University Suites dormitory, which will be opening in September. Our goal is really to change the nickname down there and make this a beautiful parking lot and a great addition to the neighborhood. I'll now let Dominic Rinaldi give you more of the specifics and the engineering of the project. Dom?
Thank you. As Fred said, Dominic Rinaldi with the BSC Group. We're the surveyors and engineers for the project. Does anyone mind if I maybe?
No, come on up. Come on up.
Okay.
And just grab one of the microphones off the.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, just keep it close. Okay. It's a little easier to talk to the drawing. So to get you situated on this plan, north is sort of up and to the right of the plan. The lot's bounded by Aiken Street to, we'll call it the west, Perkins Street to the south, Riverwalk Way we'll call to the east, and residential condominiums to the north. And just on the other side of those condominiums is the Merrimack River. Currently, the lot's surfaced with a dense graded crushed stone, so it's a crushed stone mixed with sands and other finer materials. It's similar to what you'd use as a base for paving. It's a very dense, firm, hard surface. The lot extends. There's a retaining wall all along Aiken Street and here, roughly parallel to Perkins Street, runs to about 12 to 14 feet high. It's old granite block. Our understanding is it was an old mill foundation, actually. And the lot is at the bottom end of that. Runs from the wall on Perkins Street to roughly the same point that we're proposing in the north end. It's a little narrower. It runs to about here, kind of isn't a perfect rectangle, kind of an odd shape. There's the driveway is off of Riverwalk Way. There's an existing entry and exit gate on a concrete pad in the middle controlling access. And there is a secondary access way, very steep up the hill to Riverwalk that's also that same dense graded crushed stone. The site is pretty much entirely within bordering land subject to flooding, as you can see from the latest firm map. The elevation of the BLSF is 70 feet, which runs to just about here, so just about the entire parking area. 70-foot contour runs sort of right along the edge of the existing parking lot. Grading-wise and stormwater management, existing conditions, everything generally runs south to north. There is one existing catch basin located here in the middle of the parking lot. The lot also sort of flows to the middle. That existing catch basin's tied through a 12-inch pipe to the existing city drain system and river walkway, which ultimately makes its way to the river. Runoff that bypasses that catch basin or lands further north of that catch basin just continues to run over land through the grass area here, ultimately making its way into the condo parking lots and their drainage system, which then ties into the city system and again, the river. We did perform a few test pits out there to check the existing soils and seasonal high groundwater, sort of on either side of the middle, one further down in this area and one up in this area. We found very similar conditions in both. It's a silt loam material, very fine, a lot of silt, not a lot of grit, very poorly draining material, with a seasonal high groundwater between 88 and 100 inches below existing grade. So for design purposes, we assumed 88 inches. So we assumed sort of the worst case scenario. That soil is actually why we did look at some permeable paving here. The intent from the university was to go with some low impact development, which we did, but we opted against permeable paving because with the poorly draining soils, it's a very slow infiltration rate, and you don't have the volume under that permeable paving to really get your bang for your buck. You're still going to get a lot of runoff with permeable paving and still need additional stormwater management features. What the university is proposing is to increase the size of this lot slightly, particularly in the width, pave it, install new stormwater management features, new landscaping, new lighting. Currently, it's not very well lit to provide for safety purposes, improve the overall aesthetics of the lot. From stormwater management and grading system, we tried to mimic as much as possible to a degree what's out there. The grading is still generally south to north, still generally pitches towards the center of the site where we've where we propose to build rather, a infiltration trench in a landscape island. Essentially what this is it's roughly equivalent to a swale. There'll be stone check dams every, I believe, 50 feet along that length to slow the water and hold the water and force it down through the infiltration trench, which will be underlain by rain store systems, essentially a stackable, buildable chamber. Sort of looks like an egg crate. You build them up and build them out and provides the volume. Overflow from that or anything that bypasses that due to grading will end up in this bioretention area here at the north end of the site. It's a foot deep with an overflow at 10 inches, so there'll never be more than 10 inches of ponding. The overflow is through an area drain which connects to the existing drain pipe and ultimately into the city's system. The system's been designed to meet DEP's stormwater management standards and in several cases greatly exceed them. For example, on the peak runoff rates, for the 2-year storm, we have approximately an 89% reduction in existing peak flow, and the 10-year storm, we have an approximately 43% reduction, with a small reduction in the 100-year storm as well. And while it's not required, we do actually attenuate, we do actually reduce the volume from each of these design storms as well. As I mentioned, the site is in BLSF, and there is, while we tried to maintain grades as closely as possible, it's a very flat site, which isn't necessarily conducive to good, effective paving. So there are some areas, especially back on this side, where we had to do a little filling. So we've provided compensatory storage. It's primarily in this area here along the side of the lot. We're going to dig into that hill, cut it back. And I apologize, those compensatory storage calcs are actually in the stormwater management report, and apparently a lot of people had difficulty finding them, so my lesson learned from this is I will no longer put them in the stormwater management report. I will just put them in the NOI. But as you can see from those, we are actually increasing on an incremental foot basis the storage in the floodplain. As I mentioned, we're going to do lighting improvements, landscaping improvements. We have added sycamore trees. It's let's check my notes so I get the right name. The bloodgood plane tree. There are 5 on this side and 2 more larger species that we proposed here. It's a type of sycamore. We sort of just had this discussion, but it's a very hardy, good street, good parking lot tree. If you have, as we sort of discussed, if you have a species you'd prefer to use for those, in particular the 2 larger species, we're perfectly amenable to that. As far as the schedule for this project, it will start roughly immediately after school commencement. The intent is to have it built by the end of no later than the end of the summer when students return, so it'll be fully operational. Hopefully it'll be much shorter than that. So with that, if you have any questions.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First, the bioretention area.
Yep.
Did you include in your flood storage calculations that area, or did you exclude that from?
It's included in, it's why the lower elevations, you see a couple of lower elevations have a huge increase. That's basically where that is.
All right, because normally we don't allow that as part of the calculation simply because typically, as you know, when you do, that area is being used for infiltration and containing runoff from the site, which is fairly immediate. Typically you run your calculations, up to 24 hours, whereas the flood waters are typically not getting on site until 24 hours at the earliest, plus after the storm event, and sometimes several days later. The reason that we generally exclude that is because that's already infiltrated. It's already going to be filled with water. So it's like taking, it's the so-called bathtub effect. You can't dig the hole, and all right. So but I'm seeing that we have fairly substantial excesses.
Right, and that's why I was saying where the excess.
The nomenclature here is a little bit different, so I have a question on that. And you say you have your elevations, and then on your sheet you have your existing flood storage. Can you explain that column? Because I'm not sure what you mean by that.
That's effectively, that is the existing volume in that 1 foot increment. As the site stands now, that's what you have. So for example, between 67 and 66 feet between those 2 elevations, right now, there is approximately 5,852 cubic feet of flood storage.
All right. How much are you, okay, so at 65 to 60, at the 65, 66 elevation, how much are you filling in at that elevation?
Honestly, on that elevation, filling, none, because that is just a very small piece over in this corner that we're not actually touching. The increase, as I said, on
all right,
that
so you're providing excess there.
That increase is
All right.
entirely.
So and at 66 to 67, how much are you filling at that elevation?
I don't know exactly how much we're filling. I know the end net result is 6151 cubic feet of storage, so there's an increase of 299 cubic feet between what they have now. And it's a mix of cut and fill in that situation, I'm sure. What is that, 66 and 67?
So you were,
Actually, 66 and 67 might not really be much fill either. 67 and 68, there will be, for example, some fill in this area, but then there'll be cuts the cuts are actually over in here and back in here, sort of in all of this area.
all right, so you based the third column then, for instance, the flood storage after grading, well, your last column are your nets.
Is a net.
See,
yes.
typically we see, and what we request is the elevation on a foot-to-foot basis, which you've provided us with. And then there's existing conditions. So existing conditions would be obviously whatever the flood capacity is now.
Right, which is
So,
that first
yeah,
column.
we don't like it in an absolute term, which is kind of how you've done this scale. We like it in a relative term. And what I mean by that is we want to know between 65 and 66 how much you're filling at that elevation, and then how much cut you're providing at that elevation. We're not getting the first part of that, but you're giving us the net. I suppose we could back into it from subtracting it, but
Yeah, it wouldn't probably come out exact that way because
well,
in that flood storage after grading, there's some fill and some cut.
well, the reason I bring that up then is the Wetlands Protection Act requires at each incremental elevation that your cuts be at least what your fills are.
Right, and that's what the last column is.
Okay. So it's just that that second column, the existing flood storage, kind of threw me because to me it doesn't. I don't even know how you arrive at that figure. You just sort of putting a plane at the 100-year flood elevation and figuring out how much open space you have at that elevation.
Yeah, it's basically we created surfaces in AutoCAD at each elevation.
All right.
And at existing, and then again at proposed, to figure out the volume in that space.
All right,
It gives
so-
you the volume.
So
And then it gives you, and you just.
So between the existing conditions and proposed post-development, there's no net loss of flood storage capacity
there's
at
the
each
net-
incremental
right,
elevation.
that the net increase is
Okay,
the last column.
all right, okay, so that's,
Yeah.
okay, I just wanted to go over that. My second comment is with respect to the trees.
Yep.
I know that this is just to explain the historical significance here and a little bit of the history. I don't want to dwell on this because this commission has spent literally between Louisa and I going back, Commissioner Varnum and I, and then most recently the existing commission has spent countless meetings with respect to the sycamore trees that were removed from the site, and the most recent developers to the various parcels that were received or purchased from DCAM, from Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to the extent that our protection order on those trees impacted their properties, have stepped up to the plate, so to speak, and have planted young sycamore species back on site. And you unfortunately inherited what I would say is the mother lode site. It was the trees that were in various old glass plate photographs of the city of Lowell and of the mills. Those trees I think there's a glass plate. The National Park Service has a kiosk, historical kiosk on this site out on the Riverwalk, and you can see over the mills the trees that were taken down. And that glass plate was taken in 1873. and the trees were already well over the 4-story mill building. And those trees were the ones that were removed and got the ire of this commission with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because they were protected by this commission, and were taken down literally in the dead of night. And we didn't appreciate it. It was a long time battle that this commission had with the Commonwealth over those. That being said, we note that you have included numerous sycamore trees. I know they're identified as plane trees in your filing. The European common nomenclature is usually referred to as a plane tree, and
Yeah, I had to ask
over
that
here
question myself.
the common name is typically sycamore. The species, the specific species that I'm looking for, and the ones that were removed were of the botanical name Occidentalis. And I note that you have a different one. That's fine for the smaller ones, but the 2 4 to 6 inch caliper ones that you're proposing, my own preference is that they be Occidentalis.
That's fine.
And obviously the trees that were removed survived fires.
Right.
I don't know how many floods, and just basically were neglected and were very hardy, and whatnot. But those are my comments. Thank you for your for this plan. It's fairly detailed. The comments that came back from the DPD had indicated on the on your swale, the trench, that I guess they would like to see more vegetation in there.
Yeah, if I can address that.
Yeah, certainly.
The reason we didn't actually put trees in that is the rain store system underneath. In an effort to, one of the, in discussions with the city engineer, she had requested that we make a significant reduction in the peak flow and ideally volume, which we have, and most of that is actually coming through those rain store systems. That's why they're fairly wide under that trench. And the problem with planting trees on them is the roots going down into them and breaking them up and providing that volume. And the example detail that was provided in the comments provides significantly less storage volume. The only storage volume in that is the voids in the soils. I did the math quickly, and we could just barely eke out the required recharge volume from standard 3, but we wouldn't get anything near the peak rate attenuation, and obviously then the total volume infiltrated back into the ground on that.
Now, I understand that you're removing one catch basin that is existing on the system from the current city system.
Yes.
And infiltrating it into the bioretention area?
Yep.
Okay. Some of the commissioners may speak as to the placement of the trees. As to the 2 larger caliper sycamores, one of them at least, perhaps my preference would be to move it further up on that slope and away from the parking.
Again, fine.
That maybe, I don't know if you had any plans other than just grassing that area, but
Yeah, really everything else in this area is
I
grass
think it would
area.
probably be better moved away and have perhaps a better shot of survival further away from the parking area. One last comment, and that's, do you have a snow removal area for that parking lot?
We do. They weren't marked on the plan. There's a few areas that they can put snow. One of which is in this area that we're cutting into the hill. This corner is sort of freed up. One thing I forgot to mention, by the way, is that driveway, that secondary driveway, will be taken out, and that area will be reseeded into part of the hillside. Additionally, there's some area next to the stairs here, and then a bit of an area over in, on the west side of the bioretention area.
All right, and finally, I had discussed this with Mr. Gabriel. He had requested a meeting last week and had showed me the plans and the filing last week and had asked for my comments, and I had made several comments, and pretty much all in line with what's come out tonight. So it really, nothing that's hidden or anything like that. But one thing that I had requested, and I'm not sure that we've received it in a supplemental filing, is an O&M notation for snow removal and for no salt in this particular site. Sanding should be okay, but it would be my preference that this area not be salted. I think there's similar restrictions on the condo lots. I'm not entirely sure on that, but I think we place similar restrictions throughout the various parking areas that Trinity is now developing, and that were part of the hub hosiery, and then the what's this river meadow renaissance on the river condominiums. So,
Chairman Zacher, I per our conversation, I spoke with our ground supervisor, and presently the university really doesn't have an O&M, a standard operating and maintenance for parking lots. Part of it is if there's ice, we salt. I spoke to them about that, and we understand that if there's a condition down that there's a no salt order in this condition, we will accept that. The university is presently developing standard procedures for addressing all of our parking areas and the such. As we are growing, so are our procedures, and various things are now catching up to where they should have been, since they haven't been developed in the past 30-odd years.
Well, the reason I bring this up, the primary reason is your catch basins have, your TSS removal exceeds the standards. However, salt, as we know, dissolves. And one of these, the overflow for this and the catch basins end up in the city system, but the city system pretty much almost immediately empties into the Merrimack River at this stage. So we just don't want a high concentration of salts ending up in the river. And that's the reason I bring this up. It's just not a good thing to, I know historically it's what happens, but when we have an opportunity to correct a situation, we're going to take it. So, okay, that's the reason I bring it up.
And the university understands that, and we'll go with whatever order is put upon us. And I've already as I said, I spoke with the groundskeeper, and we know that may be coming.
All right. I have no further questions. Commissioner Lovely?
Thank you. Just a couple of things. First of all, I think this is a good project. I like the fact that we're reducing infiltration into an overworked stormwater system already, so that's always a good thing. Try to manage our stormwater on site. I also appreciate the aesthetic improvements that are being proposed, particularly in light of what the chairman was saying with regard to the sycamore trees. I do have a couple of quick questions just regarding use. Presently, I believe that lot is used by commuters, not by students living on campus. Is that correct? It's intended for general parking. All right. I think for those of us who live around there, have been to Spinners games, we know that the area is somewhat congested, and particularly in light of the ongoing development with the finishing of the build-out of the remaining mill buildings near Perkins, along with the new university residence hall, which again is a great project, I think. I'm curious as to what plans are there in terms of how often are these parking lots going to be occupied? Is it simply during the school year? Is it going to be particularly used during baseball games in the future, like it has been in the past before the new residence hall was being built? If someone could speak to that a bit, I'd appreciate that.
So as Fred had indicated,
If you could just identify yourself.
sure, I'm Jean Robinson, Director of Capital Projects. As Fred had indicated, you all know that the university is growing in leaps and bounds, and we are on a daily basis trying to meet our parking challenges. The Parking and Transportation Department right now is trying to come up with a plan on which lots will be used for which circumstances or which levels of employees or students. This particular lot is intended to pretty much remain or maintain its current use. So students during the school year and LeLasheur Park or Spinners parking during the summer. We do not anticipate having substantial parking needs for this space during the summer. We have the east parking garage that we could easily use for the east campers during the summer.
All right, thank you, I appreciate that. Just as a suggestion, with all the congestion over there, if there are any opportunities where that lot is underutilized, to maybe look at giving nearby residents or others the opportunity to use the lot. I think, for example, when there's snow emergencies, I know the city opens up their garages for parking, to accommodate plowing. I think that may be something you may want to consider, particularly in light of that whole area is very congested, even when you're doing parking. I mean, there might be kind of a win-win for the residential communities around there and the university to try and share spaces, particularly when you're talking about plowing and trying to find out areas to store snow. Something just to keep in mind.
Yeah, we can look at that, certainly. I'll pass that along to the parking department.
Thank you. No further questions.
Commissioner Varnum?
I'm interested in getting back to the sycamore tree situation here. You had, Chairman Zacher had mentioned that, let's see if I can get the genus right. This is so tiny. Planatus or something.
That's on there now? Sorry.
Anyway, the species is occidentalis, the native species here. And the London plane is a hybrid, I understand.
Yes.
That has been developed that's more disease resistant. My preference would be to try a couple of the native species, to occidentalis instead of the London plane, just to kind of replace the ones that were taken down. They are slightly different in appearance. The London plane seems to have very sort of horizontal limbs rather than upright, and that's just my preference if it's a true replacement.
Yeah, no, that's, as I said, that's fine. At the time that we did the plan, to tell the truth, the only thing we had heard was sycamore, so we used a species we use a lot.
And what is the distance between those two larger ones there?
50 feet, give or take,
Okay.
40 or 50. I don't have a scale on me, so.
I can't find it now, but there was someplace in here that was removing granite curb from the site.
Moving granite curb.
And it's being replaced with cement or something.
Currently, there's no curb on the existing parking lot.
Oh,
In a few spots, most areas, there'll actually remain no curb. In a few spots, like the entrance and over in this corner, as much in an effort to prevent anyone from driving out onto the grass as anything else or trying to sneak around the gates, we've added some curb. We do have at the driveway, currently there's nothing. We're going to make a more sort of formalized actual driveway with some curb returns and an actual ramp on both sides of the driveway to clean that up a little.
Cement curb is more durable than asphalt, I'm
Yeah.
assuming. Yeah.
Yeah, asphalt curb's terrible.
That doesn't seem to stand up very well.
No.
Could you just explain the drainage through the center containment area there, through
Yep,
the parking
it's-
lot? That drains into the bioretention area?
Yeah, ultimately what it is, it's a depressed, very flat swale that follows the same grade as the lot, which is right around 1% slope. And it's about a foot deep, and every 50 feet we're installing stone check dams. So there's a detail on the plans. They're basically, I believe, 8 inches high, and they're stone. It's made of varying size stones and some geotextile fabric to actually slow that water down and hold it. And the intent is to, if you hold it back just enough, it's more like it'll go into the ground. It'll go down since it can't go forward. It's at the bottom of the swale, there's gravel, and below the gravel are these rain store systems I was talking about. So the intent, how it'll function is, water will drain in through the sides. As I said, there's no curb. There is a strip of crushed stone, I believe it's a foot wide, acts as a little bit of pre-treatment. As the water comes over it, takes some of the bigger sediments off the top. And then it goes into the swale, gets held up by the check dams, goes down through the gravel into that rain store system, and then ultimately will go into the ground in very big storms, or some areas that are sort of past that point. It'll overflow, and it'll end up, since everything is graded to this point, again, no curbing on this side, just a guardrail, keep people from going past there, and into the bioretention area.
So you'd expect that bioretention area to be dry most of the time?
Smaller storms, yeah. I mean, you get into multi-day storms and things get a little different than how they're modeled, so there'll be some water in there. There will be, because of the silt loam soils, we didn't design the bioretention area as an infiltrating bioretention area. I mean, some water will go down through it, but it doesn't have a lot of storage volume, so most of it will go through the soils, and then anything as it builds up, there's actually going to be an under drain which connects to that area drain as well.
Okay, so you show it there as blue, as if it were standing water, where it'd be a grassed area?
Stands out in a plan better. It's a wetland seed mix in there, so it'll basically be a shallow grass depression.
So it would not be cut, or it would be cut?
It's cut. It's in the operation maintenance plan. You cut it about once a year. You really don't want grass and things like that to go much below 4 inches, because that kind of gives you some of that treatment through the grass. But you also don't want it to grow into a giant meadow that takes up the volume. So it's about once or twice a year they'll probably have to cut it.
Okay. You have a detail here of the tree planting.
Yes, I believe we do. Let's find it. I think it's on the last sheet, if memory serves me right. Yeah, last sheet. There's a tree planting and a tree protection detail.
Now, it's kind of hard for me to read this, but anyway, the topsoil area, or the hard pan, seems to be directly under the root ball. And I think it refers to that in the narrative somewhere, that the root ball will be placed on the compacted soil.
Could be in
I'm just concerned the soil in that area is really, really poor, as you probably know. And I'm wondering if the amended soil should go down further than that.
Certainly can. It's not. Sorry, my copy's really small too. Yeah. that's fine. Do you have any suggestions on a particular depth you'd like that, 6 inches?
I assume you're going to have an arborist
Yeah, well,
plant it, but they'll probably come in at the point where the hole is
Right.
ready to be
I mean,
dug.
we can
rather-
amend this detail easily. We can amend the detail.
Okay, that would make me happy too.
Sure. That's why I was just asking if you had any thoughts. You seem to know what you're talking about.
And just a final thing, there is something in the notes about if the species can't be acquired, that substitutions will be made. And I certainly wouldn't want to see anything substituted for the sycamores. I think that's a definite.
We can amend that note too to say for the other plantings except those two, what is it called, occidentalis? Is that how you
Yeah,
pronounce
it's Platanus occidentalis. The common name is the American sycamore tree. You know, and then as I said before, the common names are kind of meaningless because it's an oak tree. You know, in Australia is a I don't know what the heck it is up here, but it's something else. And you know, we have these what are the big swamp trees in the south? I can't. They're called called.
Live oaks or something?
Yeah, they're called just the complete opposite, you know, in the southern hemisphere. So the common names are sort of meaningless. But the American sycamore, the species that we're concerned with, the botanical name is Platanus occidentalis. Now, with respect to the scarlet oak that you have, the Quercus coccinea, is that it doesn't really need to be a quote wetland, you know, habitable, because this particular area is relatively dry, as we know. It's sort of isolated from the even though it's a floodplain, it's kind of an atypical floodplain, although it did have water in it a couple of years ago. But what's do we know that what type? I'm not familiar with the species.
I would have to check with my landscape architect
All right,
specifically,
okay.
but they, you know,
But yeah, I would want as far as, and I agree with Commissioner Varnum, as far as the substitutions,
no
the
substitutions on
Platanus,
that.
Acer, what is it? Acerifolia are to go and to be replaced by the occidentalis.
Please realize that, as Chairman Zacher had said, he and I have previously spoke on this project. After speaking and hearing of the sycamores, I've already I spoke to our ground supervisor. He is already reaching out to nurseries to find the largest caliper sycamores. We have no intention of substituting 2 large caliber sycamores on here, and he's already reaching out and trying to at this time make sure that we have at least 2 available to us.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Lynch?
Just a couple questions. You have a section on the map that has the landscaped area that is adjacent to the condominium parking lot. Do you plan on staging any equipment on the condominium parking lot at all, or is it all going to be staged within your work
Everything
area?
will have to be staged on the
Okay.
university's lot. I mean, unless the contractor went on their own and got permission, obviously we can't stage anything on
Right.
public property or someone else's property, so.
And then the other question I had was Commissioner Lovely had mentioned that that's a very congested area as far as traffic. Do you guys anticipate any traffic concerns with Aiken Street or even Perkins?
During
While you're doing
construction?
construction, right,
Oh, sorry.
yes. Sorry.
No, this isn't gonna be it's not gonna be a lot of construction vehicles. It's a relatively small project. You know, again, they will very much have to, because it's a small project
Right.
and there is limited staging, they will very much have to schedule deliveries as they use them.
Right, I just know how busy it can get in the afternoon commute,
Yeah.
so I just was curious if there's gonna be any delays, so.
Yeah, and generally speaking, you know, for the bigger piece of equipment, things that come in on trailers, they'll deliver those and they'll stay there until they're done, and then they'll take them out once. You know, I suspect it's maybe 4 total days of paving,
Okay,
you know.
thank you.
Yeah, and one thing that I forgot, on your bioretention area, given the history of the site, and one of the primary reasons for not using a porous pavement, you had indicated that the substrate, the subsoils are fairly compacted. Are you, with respect to the area around the bioretention area, in order to facilitate its effectiveness, are you excavating around, you know, a greater area there and replacing soils to?
Yeah, you replace the soil with a specified treatment medium. It's a very specific mix of, there's sand, topsoil, some compost, things like that.
In order to provide, and so that can be an effective.
Yeah, and that's actually what gives you the sort of the treatment as the water goes down through that. That picks up the treatment.
Maybe at the time that you're removing those soils from the site, they also do an excavation around the root balls and replace with an appropriate loam. You know, pending, because I know the trees will be coming in much later, I understand that, but it might be a good time to do that too, just to prepare specific areas for the trees, and to give them a better shot of survival too. Okay, all right. I don't have any further questions. Is there, what I'd like to do is, I know we had the DPD comments and they've been answered to my satisfaction. Did the DEP have any specific comments on this site, on this project? No?
Not unless the commission have any questions for us. I'm happy to answer any of those for you, but.
All right. Is there anyone here who would like to offer, well, actually, do I have a motion to close the, well, actually, no. Is there anyone here who would like to offer their comments or concerns? Yeah, if you could kindly step up and identify yourself for the record.
Hello, Matthew Dakota, Facilities Trustee at Renaissance on the River. I just have a question. Is this a copy of the plan? I just haven't seen it. Could I take a look at it real quick?
Sure.
Great. Okay. Great. Looks great. Good luck. Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to offer their comments or concerns regarding this project? Is there anyone else who would like to offer their comments or concerns regarding this project? All right, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll offer a motion to close the public
By
hearing.
Commissioner Lovely, seconded by
Second?
Commissioner Lynch. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Do I have a motion? It's, as, I think we need to address a couple things. One is, you know, with respect to no substitutions on the species of American sycamore, and the prior excavations necessary for, you know, to ensure survival. Those are some modifications. And then also, I know I had mentioned that there wasn't a lot of comment about the salting of the site, but I think that could become a permanent part of an order. So I'm trying to think of what else that we had discussed. And anything else that's part of the motion. Do I have a motion on this?
If I hear you correctly, Mr. Chairman, I'm thinking we're talking about potentially voting on a standard order of conditions with 3 special conditions, 1 being no substitutions on the 2 sycamore trees, 2 being proper site preparation for the installation of the trees in light of Commissioner Varnum's comment about the hard pan underneath the root ball, and then the 3rd comment would be, or special condition would be to, I guess it depends on how strict we want to be, avoid or minimize the use of salt. I guess.
Yeah, I would say avoid.
Yeah, avoid.
Because this system does the catch basins do empty into the river in very short order here, so.
Right. So I guess avoid the use of road salt and any sort of management of ice that may be occurring on the lot in the winter months. So if I understand that correctly, I'll offer that as a motion to see if anyone would like to second it.
Okay, by Commissioner Lovely, do I have was that a motion?
Yes, it
Okay, and do I have a second?
Second.
By Commissioner Lynch. Now open it up for discussion.
I'd like to offer a substitute motion, or an amended motion,
Okay.
that two of the trees, I think we should say specifically, because it's not on the plan, that two of the trees shall be Planatus occidentalis, and that there be no substitution of other types of trees or species for any of the sycamores proposed. So that would be 7 sycamores that would be on the site. I'd like to also have no decrease in the size of the trees planted from what is proposed on the plans. The soil amendment, I think should be probably an additional 1.5 to 2 feet in every direction around the root ball, as a minimum.
Was that 1.5 to 2 feet?
What's that?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
A 1.5 to 2 feet.
Okay, thank you.
At a minimum around the root ball. And I'd like to see the trees staked. There was no mention of that in the plan. The other things have been mentioned, I think.
All right. So that's an addition to,
That's it. That would be an additional amendment to
as
the
a, yeah, okay, so
motion.
not a substitution, in addition to.
In addition.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do I have a second on the motion to amend, or I guess to add to Commissioner Lovely's
Second.
motion? Okay, by Commissioner Lynch. Any further discussion on that? All right, now taking the second motion first, Commissioner Varnum's motion, all in favor signify by saying yea or nay. Commissioner Lovely? Commissioner Varnum?
Aye.
Chair is yes. Commissioner Lynch?
Aye.
Okay. Now on the first motion, as now amended, Commissioner Lovely?
Aye.
Commissioner Varnum?
Aye.
Chair is yes. Commissioner Lynch?
Aye.
Okay. All right. That's it. All right. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. And thank you. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for understanding our
Chairman, could we just run through those conditions one more time so I have them correctly?
say that again?
Could we just run through the conditions, the special conditions one more time so
All
I
right.
have them correctly for the record?
Yeah, the three primary conditions from Commissioner Lovely's motion were no substitution of the American sycamores. The second special condition was no salt to be used on the site. And the third special condition was the excavation of the root balls to enlarge the excavation. Did you get Commissioner Varnum's amendments?
Right, which included the additional amendment to be a minimum of 1.5.
Correct. It was specifying the size, the size of it.
Okay.
Okay.
And she also
And also that,
expanded all sycamores.
right. Right, and Commissioner Varnum's amendment also spoke to the sycamore trees, and was very particular about the caliper and about the caliper of the
Sorry, I
sycamore.
got a bunch of people talking at me. I'm sorry, I missed that last
And
one.
Commissioner Varnum's amendments also included no substitutions at all for the sycamores or the caliper on the two large ones.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, it included all of them, I'm sorry. Okay, well, the motion is part of the thing. Well, Aaron, if you could send out the, prior to sending out the order,
Yeah, I will. Absolutely.
send it out to the commission so it's,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll send it out for.
all right, thank you. All right, thank you for coming in. Thank you all. All right, moving on, the second item on the agenda, enforcement order continued from prior hearings. Paul Mercier concerning DEP file number 2060701. Violation location is 51 and 57 Shirley Avenue, and it's construction of a single-family home in a 100-year floodplain which is bordering land subject to flooding. In our packets, we received an updated proposal for a bond. It was in my packet.
Do you have any extra copies of that, Aaron? We didn't get it.
Pardon me?
We didn't get the,
Either did we.
he,
He's got one.
the chairman has it, but nobody else does.
I don't think we have it. I don't think I have it either.
Say that again?
I don't believe I have the bond proposal either. From the last meeting, you mean?
Well, no, this is March 13th.
That was,
Yeah, all right.
we
Oh, it was
discussed
in
that
my-
at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
there's nothing new since that.
Oh, there's
Right.
nothing new? If you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. My name is Richard O'Neill, and I am here this evening on behalf of Paul Mercier. With me this evening is Mr. Stephen Erickson from Norse Environmental. I must say that I'm very new to this filing, and I was just a little panicked when you started talking about something that I did not have, but it appears that we both have the same document. I was going to save to the end, I like your shirt, and I do note that the experts are a bit divided in the order of finish that they're predicting for the university, but it appears that at least there is a significant population out there of the sports writing world that believes we're going to do number one. Return to old glory days. I like the shirt. Mr. Chairman, I am new into this project. By new, we're talking this week. And my understanding is that the parties have come to an understanding relative to the planting plan that was discussed at the last meeting, and that there will be a delay in the construction of this plan, implementation and construction of the plantings pursuant to this plan, until such time as the determination is made by the DEP on the appeal that has been made. And I think my understanding of that is correct. The issue that was discussed at the time of the last meeting was the prospects of a bond being placed and the magnitude of that bond. There was discussion with respect to the amounts of monies that were to be expended for both materials and for labor. As I understand it, the materials cost was estimated to be at or about $6,000, if I'm not mistaken. And there were varying ranges of costs relative to the construction of the project itself. It was my client's understanding that in his anticipation that if he were required to actually construct this, that it would be his time that would be used to do that, and that he does have the capacity in his line of work to be able to do that. And so he had looked at the cost, I think, that's identified here from Mahoney's Garden of $6,375 for the materials that would be involved as the cost that he thought that he would be looking to anticipate. During the course of the discussion last week, there was the issue of bonds, and I think that folks who were here were thinking that this might be like another kind of bond where people were paying 10% on the bond to cover the costs, yet in this world of bonding, it's almost a dollar-for-dollar approach. And so the suggested number by the commission of posting a bond at $20,000 would have meant a $20,000 payment. And quite honestly, my client just does not have the financial capacity to do that. In my conversations with him, I suggested that perhaps covering the cost that are listed here with some advancement toward the anticipated construction costs, notwithstanding that he would be doing the work, in the amount of $10,000 would be a sum that I would, at a minimum, suggest to the Conservation Commission to be the amount of the bond to be secured by him in this arena.
All right. There's a lot of problems with that. One is we haven't specifically ordered Mr. Mercier to, as part of the enforcement order, to come back before us with a bond proposal. It was a suggestion in lieu of the penalties and fines that have already been levied and accrued, which, from my understanding, are roughly for this second enforcement order and the second phase or the second stage of penalties that had issued are, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, are around $15,000.
Well, there's been two.
There was the first one, which was around 1,500,
Correct.
which is done. That's already passed.
That's
It's-
correct. And the second amount for the second 56 days is 15,300.
So roughly around $15,000. The discussion several meetings ago was for Mr. Mercier, in lieu of or in some way in mitigating those fines which have already accrued, to propose a bond for the restoration of the site. Now, the fact that Mr. Mercier is going to be doing the work, as you can see, is completely irrelevant to us, because if we use a bond, we're not using Mr. Mercier.
And I don't disagree with that, Mr. Chairman. I was simply saying that in his mind, his thinking was X.
No, I understand that, but it's the purpose of a bond is for the municipality
I agree.
to utilize the monies
Right.
to hire an entity to complete the project as ordered. And certainly, you know, the assumption is that Mr. Mercier is not doing the work, so, you know, the bond has to be in sufficient amounts to cover that cost. For me, speaking for myself, I'm not particularly interested in that proposal. I'd just assume at this point in time, go forward with the fines. It was an extended olive branch, I think, from the commission.
And if I might, Mr. Chairman, I think it was perceived as exactly that. And it's why Mr. Mercier was not able to be here tonight, and so I was asked if I would come. What I'm talking about is his capacity at this point. And if the commission were looking at a larger sum, then he would need the time to get that money in order to increase the amount of the bond. And that was essentially where I was coming from in saying to you that the amount of a bond that he could secure, which would cost him the $10,000, would be a $10,000 bond. That if the commission was willing to extend time to Mr. Mercier to increase that bond, that I think there would be some agreement, there would be some grounds to come to an agreement on that, and he would do that at pick a time in the future, 30, 60 days out, that would allow him time to gather the resources necessary to increase that bond.
Well, we don't have a completed bond submittal yet.
I understand that.
So I guess I'm a little unclear then what exactly you're asking us to do. You're asking us to consider a lesser amount. The amount of the bond is governed by state law. There's not a lot of flexibility. It's the applicant would, as far as the bond goes, has to solicit 3 bids, and then there's a automatic pad added into, you know, the calculation that comes back, and you know, we have one completed estimate from Western Nurseries. Are these other 3 from Greener Landscape, are those complete bids? Is that what the proposal is here, or?
I would ask Mr. Erickson that this was his.
But before I go into that, well, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Erickson.
Actually, Greener Landscaping and Western Nurseries are complete bids for putting the plants into the ground, and we're waiting for one from Shortcut Landscaping that still have not given us their estimate yet. We should have that any day now.
And now, let me ask you something. What is the current status of the superseding submittal with the DEP? Because my understanding is we were going to have some aspect of that, whether it was approved or denied at this time.
The DEP has asked for modifications. We had a retaining wall there at one point in time, and because of the retaining wall, we had to do additional compensatory storage. They had asked us to remove the retaining wall. So we removed the retaining wall, went to a one-to-one slope, and we've submitted that plan to DEP. Legally, they have 70 days after the submission of a new plan. So we just submitted that plan to them this week when I got it back from the surveyor. So legally, they have 70 days. We would hope that they would act sooner than that.
We would hope so, too.
And I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. This isn't something that we're looking to extend either. I mean, it seems to me that this is an issue that has been a bird in the saddles of both sides that needs to be resolved, and we need to move on. My comments about the $10,000 was really based upon my assumption that the greener landscape plan would be that approximate number. If you wanted the bond at that number of $11,140, then Mr. Mercier would have the capacity to do that. We would secure that bond from A.A. Doherty out of Boston, and we would submit that to the conservation agent for his review.
Why don't I make this suggestion? And I'm sure the commissioners will also have suggestions. But for me, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I just want to make it crystal clear that there is an outstanding fine that has accrued over the period of 56 days or something like that at $300 a day. That's already done. I would make the suggestion that Mr. Mercier put together a complete bond submittal and offer it to the commission for our, I don't want to keep going back and forth with partial and how do you feel about this and that and the other thing. I think what we want and what we've, or at least some of us have extended to Mr. Mercier was make a proposal. He did that, but he needs to finish it now. So let's get a complete bond proposal back so we can consider something, because we don't have anything to consider yet.
I agree. I'm with you.
So we can consider something, and then at that time, I will tell you freely, I've got no hidden agendas. I don't believe in that. I don't appreciate going in front of boards in other cities and only to, not have them hint at which way they're leaning or not. I am leaning strongly towards mitigating or reducing the fine in like and kind amounts to the amount of bond that's submitted, with the understanding that the bond is to be used for its usual and customary purpose, and that means it sits there until the project is finished, and if it's done to satisfaction, it gets returned to Mr. Mercier. A win-win situation for him and for us. We get the site restored or properly built out under the Wetlands Protection Act and the City of Lowell bylaw, and Mr. Mercier gets a significant reduction in a fine that has already accrued.
And I would concur, Mr. Chairman, that is a usual and customary
That's
procedure.
the way I feel.
And I would,
But that's not unanimous on this board, and from the comments, I know some of the members aren't here tonight, from the comments from some of the other members, and I'll let them speak for themselves. There's 3 others here tonight. But some of the other commissioners don't feel that way, but I do. With that in mind, I'll open it up. Commissioner Lovely?
Echo your comments in that it's always been my perspective that I'd like to see work done in lieu of punitive fines. And to the extent that we can get there sooner rather than later, let's do it. and I would agree with the chairman that it makes no sense to continue to have these back and forth interactions with really nothing of substance to discuss, because we're still waiting for pieces of information. So I would suggest we pick a date, look at continuing this hearing, pick a date, and that we can revisit this when we have all the information that we need to make the decision. No further comments, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Varnum?
I'm disappointed that we don't have a proposal tonight, because I think we were very clear at the last meeting that that's what we were wanting, and certainly you've made a verbal proposal, but we certainly expected something in writing. It's getting to the season where that site can be restored. The ground is thawing, and something needs to be done. The lot is a mess. The stumps have to be removed before you can even plant new trees. There's gouges in the earth that probably are collecting more water than would otherwise. And basically, it's an eyesore as well as being a problem for the resource. I'm interested in getting a bond in place as quickly as possible. I'm interested in getting some tree planting and some remediation started out there. I know there's a proposal to put a house in the middle, but we had discussed at length that the edges of the site could be restored with tree plantings, leaving the center for a later planting should the house not go forward. And we're now into spring, and that's what needs to happen now. On another street, right in that same neighborhood, we had one of Mr. Erickson's clients purchase the trees up front. Something like that from Mr. Mercier would certainly be a good faith effort to show that there was something that was planned and that progress was being made. And certainly if the trees were purchased up front, I'd be willing to talk about maybe a reduced amount in the bond. But some progress needs to be made. And I'm disappointed that it doesn't seem to be happening tonight.
Commissioner Lynch?
I agree with what Commissioner Barnum said. At the last meeting, there were 3 of us there, and I thought we were very clear to Ms. Hanley what we had put forward as far as a bond proposal, and we don't have any of that tonight. This is the first I'm hearing of Mr. Mercier wanting to plant the trees himself, and I'm not sure if Ms. Hanley knew that, because the 3 proposals that we got clearly showed that the landscape company was going to be doing the installation of these, except for the one that they were waiting to get the quote for installation. So this is, again, sort of the lack of communication that we seem to be facing with your client. He has 2 choices. He can either pay the fines and then also pay for the installation of the trees, or he can accept the bond and then install the trees and be done with it. It is an olive branch that I feel like we're offering him by offering the situation of the bond. So I really hope that, our next meeting or whenever he comes back with a proposal and we can finally put some sort of decision on the table, because it does need to get done.
Okay. If I may, Mr. Chairman, just briefly. Madam Commissioner, I think that on the March 13th letter, there was a parenthetical comment that the $6,374 was for the cost of the plants only.
Right, but she said she was waiting for a quote for installation from that company. There was an email trail, I believe. I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but I believe there was email communication between that company suggesting a separate a landscaping company that would do the installation of the trees, and she was waiting for that quote. So we never had any indication that Mr. Mercier was planning on doing this himself.
Then it may be that that's the miscommunication with me to you, and I apologize if that's the case. Certainly there was no effort on the part of either Mr. Erickson's office or Mr. Mercier to, I think, misrepresent to me. They were trying to get me up to speed fast enough to come in here and say to you, they didn't get it done. I'm planning on getting it done because I want to move on too, so.
Yeah, if I may be clear, and Commissioner Lynch raises a good point, it's whether, I mean, Mr. Mercier is free to do the work, provided that it is proper and according to the act and any orders that this commission issues. The bond, however,
Has to
can't
be.
take that
That's
into
right.
account.
I understand
The
that.
bond has to take into account that a qualified third party will be doing the work, other than Mr. Mercier. The Commissioner Varnum also raises a good point, and may I remind you and Mr. Mercier that there's an outstanding enforcement order to restore the site. Now, we've held that in abeyance because you can't do it, but you're gonna be able to do it within a matter of weeks, start work. And if it's a delay tactic here, the fines are gonna start again, okay? Once we hit the season where this site can be, where work can start to be actively restored. Now, again, Mr. Mercier doesn't want to put himself in a position where this commission either starts the fines again because work isn't commencing, orders the restoration, and it's not, and then he has to re-damage the site if he gets approval from the DEP. He can put himself in a very untenable situation. I call that economic waste, having to restore a site only to redevelop it. There is an active enforcement order on the site. The DEP has already indicated that the enforcement order is separate from the superseding order, and we can proceed on the enforcement order. It's separate from any action or order that they give on the superseding order. Any delay in this is not going to be, I don't appreciate it. Mr. Erickson had indicated that the DEP has, 70 days now from the resubmittal of the plans. That brings us into June. That's not going to happen. The season for restoring that site is going to, as I said, is going to be starting within a matter of weeks, if not shorter than that. I would suggest that Mr. Mercier come prepared at our next meeting, ready, willing, and able, not only with a proposal, but able to make the financial commitment to the proposal for a bond.
I understand.
Whatever that is, not, 11, 10, I don't know, whatever it is, according to the Massachusetts general laws and the requirements for bonds. And as discussed by the commission over several meetings now, okay? Again, Mr. Mercier got himself into trouble for ignoring us. And he's got people here, and I'm sure he's paying you guys. But again, this money can be used for more constructive purposes, all right? And either starting to restore the site, and as Commissioner Varnum mentioned, just getting this into place isn't enough. The site needs to be stabilized, and we're getting into a time frame where that work can commence, and will have to commence. So it's incumbent upon Mr. Mercier now to get a proposal in front of us as soon as possible, and to get the DEP to act upon the superseding filing as soon as possible. I understand the DEP has their own time concerns, but again, this is something that has been opened in front of them. My guess, I agree with you, Mr. Erickson, that it would perhaps be sooner than later for them to issue some sort of decision, provided that there are no other amendments to be made or changes to be made. But let's get it done sooner than later, and let's get something definitive and definite in front of us sooner than later. And again, for me, that's the next meeting.
Which is when, Mr. Chairman?
That would be
believe it's April 10th.
April 10th. That would be April 10th. Because the daffodils are already starting to poke up through the ground. I mean, things are starting to grow. You can hear my nasally voice. I mean, that's my hay fever's telling me, growing season is upon us. So let's get things, let's get something going here, because it's trying my patience again. And as I said, the olive branch had been extended, but it can come back just as fast. Okay.
Well, very good, Mr. Chairman, I understand.
Any other comments from the board? All right.
Thank you.
We don't, it's, as I said, this is...
April 10th.
April 10th. I didn't get copies of any minutes, Aaron.
I don't think we had any for
Okay.
tonight. It's
All right.
on the agenda.
Right, any other business? Anything to mention? I didn't see anything on the agenda.
That's it.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to
By
adjourn?
Commissioner Lynch, seconded by Commissioner Lovely. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the
Aye.
ayes have it. And good night. Yeah, go Riverhawks.